Hi, I'm Professor Scott Fries, and welcome to the online version of CMPS 147, which is the Introduction to Computer Science. In this course, we'll be learning how to write C++ code and kind of giving you a little bit of an overview of what the computer field is all about, how computers work, and how to start thinking like a programmer. And this is the introductory course for a computer science major, but it's also geared towards students who are just trying to get a little bit of exposure to programming. So it's geared towards beginners. You don't need to have a lot of experience or any experience really at all doing any programming. Because this is an online course, all of the lectures have been videotaped. Most of them have just been recorded through my slides, and we'll go through the slides today. If you're accessing this, it means you've got onto Moodle. That's going to be where where all the lecture content will be, where you'll see the assignments and submit your assignments, and also how I'll communicate your grades to you. So in this recording, I'm really just going to go through how the course is going to work, what the procedures we're going to follow, what are my policies. And then in the next few recordings, if you go through Moodle, you'll start to see more of an overview of the topics and what are we going to be, exactly what are we going to be doing throughout the course of the semester. But before I do that, I do want to talk a little bit about the computer field. Let me switch over to my slides here. And the computing field is actually very broad. We've got computer science, but we've also got computer engineering, software engineering, and information technology. And so computer science tends to be very theoretical and very math-oriented. It's about trying to come up with algorithms to make programs efficient, how to use memory most efficiently. Believe it or not, we call the major computer science, but actually that probably isn't the most accurate term for what especially this type of a course is. Computer engineering is a very important field in computing. That deals with more of the digital logic, the hardware. How do you build a CPU? How do you build an actual computing system? In Module 1, we're going to talk actually a lot about that to kind of get an idea of how does a computer work at all. But that also is not exactly the focus of this course. We're not going to be dealing with a lot of hardware-related issues and a lot of circuitry and electrical engineering type topics. Software engineering, as the slide says, is probably the more closely related subfield of computing that this course really covers. And software engineering is all about programming. It's about programming large-scale applications, although we'll start pretty small scale. Certainly, we do employ algorithms and we do use a bit of math, but it's not particularly geared towards theory. It's more geared towards real practical experience writing programs. And I think generally that's what most people will at least have their first exposure to computing in. Information technology, or IT, is yet another subfield. That's again probably not really the focus of the computer science major. It's not the focus of this course. That's more about maintaining networks, setting up networks, probably security as well. But it tends to be a little less programming oriented. We're going to learn specifically C++. Which is one of a family of very similar languages that dominate the computer science field today. This would include things like C, C++, Java, C#, JavaScript. They're all languages that actually look very similar to each other. I would almost consider them sort of different dialects. So as we learn C++, think of it as sort of learning the English language in one region of the United States, and then potentially you could probably move somewhere else and things would sound a little different. People would have a slightly different way of saying things, but you'd get by, and that's sort of what you're going to get with C++. You'll be able to move to these other languages fairly quickly after I'm learning this. So in terms of our course goals, my goal is for by the time that you work your way through all of these videos, you've done all the assignments, First, you're going to have a real good understanding of how computers work at a very basic level. One of my primary goals for this course is to demystify how computers work and how we can do all of these different amazing things with computers using fairly kind of rudimentary machines and languages. You're going to master essentially the procedural portion of C++. C++ is kind of a language split between a procedural language and an object-oriented language. And those two terms don't mean anything, probably don't mean anything to you just yet. But they will if you continue in computer science. But we're going to be focused on the procedural part, which is variables, control flow, functions, and arrays. Those are the big topics that we'll be covering throughout the semester. You will begin to use objects, so strings and files, towards the end of the semester. That's more of the object-oriented portion of C++, and it's really, this course, at least at Ramapo, is in the Introduction to Computer Science 1, or the Introduction to Computer Science is really a two-part course. There's 147 and there's CMPS 148, which delves into the object-oriented features of C++ in more depth. So this course is, I guess, ultimate goal is to prepare you for that second course in computer science, wherever you might be taking it.
Okay, so we'll start with the course policies that are probably going to get the most questions. This is an online course, and for lectures or any other parts of the course, you're not required to come on campus. I know many of you are not located near the campus. The two exceptions are for the midterm and the final exam. And so we have a midterm scheduled for January 5th and a final exam scheduled for January 16th. And for both of those exams, you are required to sit for the exam and come onto campus. For those of you that are commuting very large distances, over an hour and a half, 2 hours or so, I can make accommodations for you. I can work with you to figure out a convenient way for you to take the exam. But for those of you within a reasonable distance, you are required to come in. I'll be kind of flexible with this. We'll have 2 time slots for each of these exams. You can pick whichever one works for you. I'll have a morning one at 9 a.m. and an afternoon or an evening one at 6 to 9 p.m. for those of you that might be working. If it turns out that there's a significant number of students that can't make it during these times, and we can work something else out, we'll figure that out. I will work with you to do it. This isn't a reason to be incredibly concerned about whether or not you can get to campus this particular day, but you will have to sit for these exams. If you contact me before December 26th, I assure you that we'll work out something if you've got an issue with getting to campus. I can't accommodate any requests after December 26th, though. So if you anticipate a problem, a significant problem for coming on campus during these 2 days, you have to let me know pretty quickly. Once the 26th is passed, I won't be able to really help you with that. For the textbook, it is a required textbook. We're gonna follow this pretty closely. All of the modules that I'll talk about what the modules are in a little bit. All of the modules are directly tied to section headings in the textbook. So this is very much required reading. You should be keeping up with the reading as best as you can throughout the 4-week semester. So the textbook is an introduction to programming with C++. It's the 3rd edition. If you manage to find some other edition, the 1st or 2nd edition, that's okay. Generally, the book has not changed much, although sometimes the section headings might be a little bit different. So if you see the section headings in my slides, it doesn't match up with your book, you might need to consult the table of contents or the index to try to find where those topics might have moved to in those different editions. If you've got your choice, I would definitely recommend getting the newest edition. So as of course we know, it's an online course, and if you've gotten into this video, you might have also managed to click on the Moodle links and get into the course itself. Everything all the content that we will cover in lectures or assignments or anything about the course will be hosted under Moodle. For the most part, everything that's in Moodle is also available directly from my website. Moodle will be a pretty important resource for you. Just it organizes things a little bit nicer than maybe my website does, and it'll also let you upload your assignments and your homework assignments and your lab work. So it's important for you to familiarize yourself with Moodle pretty quickly and get an idea of what's up there. So you can access that by using www.moodle.ramapo.edu, and that just takes your regular Ramapo username and password. For those of you that might not be Ramapo students full-time, when you are enrolled into college, you will get a username and password. So if you have any issues logging in to Moodle, certainly get in touch with me right away. So the organization of the course is broken into 31 separate modules. So you can think of these as sort of mini lectures. The modules themselves are comprised of lecture slides that you can look at yourself, and also a lecture recording, very similar to what you're listening to right now. They'll also have textbook readings tied to them, and probably in each one of the modules that I've recorded, I do some live programming, and all of the programming source code is also included on Moodle and on my website as well. So for each module is probably about between 20 and 30 minutes. Some are a little bit more lengthy in the beginning, but generally they're fairly short. The biggest thing about a course like this, when you take something online, is staying up to date and staying up with the course. So everything's been organized into the 4 weeks that we have for the winter session on Moodle, and you need to definitely work very hard to follow the outline that I've provided. So for each week, I've listed the specific modules, I've given you links to the slides, to the video lectures that we'll be covering, and you definitely need to make sure that you've covered each module and you understand each module before the end of each week. To sort of ensure that you're making progress, in addition to all the programming examples that I do, and you see the solutions and you can download the code, I'm also assigning 13 labs, and I'll talk about homework in a little bit more in a second. Labs really are distinguished from homework in that they're short. Labs are very small programs. They should take you about a half hour or so, maybe in the beginning, maybe take you a little bit longer to find your way around. But they are spread throughout the module slides. Typically, we've got about 3 or 4, or 2 or 3 a week being assigned. So all the labs that are included in modules for a given week are always due at the end of that week. And on Moodle, you can see the exact deadlines for these labs. The first 2 weeks, I'm having the labs and the homework assignments due Saturday night of that week. And then the last 2 weeks of the semester, they're going to be due Friday night, and that's just to get in line with the end of the semester. So you must upload your lab assignments, which again, I'll describe them in each one of these modules where there is a lab assigned, so you'll have a clear understanding of what's being asked of you. You'll write a small program. It will be specifically targeting skills that were covered in the previous module, and then you have to upload them to Moodle by their due date. So while labs probably are only going to take you 30 minutes, maybe certainly probably hopefully under an hour, homework assignments will take up a little bit more of your time. We have 4 homework assignments being assigned for this course. Each one corresponds to the end of one of the weeks in the semester. All assignments, whether they're labs or homework assignments, they are due at 11:59 p.m. on the date that I've posted. So you have the entire day up until midnight of the following day to get that completed. So if you've looked at Moodle, if you've looked at my website, you can see that all the lab assignments, in addition to all the modules and the lectures, and all the homework assignments are already posted. Feel free to work ahead. There's no issue with working ahead, and actually I'd recommend it to the best of your ability to sort of move at a pace maybe even a little bit faster than has been outlined on Moodle. That might be a little challenging, but if you can, go right ahead and do it. But don't get too discouraged, right? So don't look ahead to homework 3 and try to do it now. Everything in this course really builds as a sequence. So homework 2 will be fairly easy to do once you've covered all the modules up through and including January 3rd's assignments. But if you try to look at that without doing homework 1, that's probably not going to be very effective. So you do need to proceed through all the modules, all the labs, and all the homework assignments in sequence. But certainly there's nothing wrong with trying to push ahead. If you have a little programming experience, you may actually be able to get through the first week fairly quickly. Due to the condensed schedule, so we only have 4 weeks, and the beginning of the first week, of course, we've got the holidays as well. So we have a very condensed schedule, and I'm not going to be able to accept any late assignments. And this is really just making sure that you understand that it is absolutely critical that you keep up. Now, although you're not going to be able to upload and get graded anything that's late, if you were unable to complete something and you complete it later and you want some feedback, I can certainly do that. Just email me your source code. Specifically, when you're uploading source code to Moodle, and again, in Module 2, I'll go over in a lot of detail, exactly what you're going to upload and what your programs are going to look like. But this is just kind of the overall policy. You must remember that I only want you to upload your source code. So there's going to be a very specific file for each program that I want you to upload, and it's really critical that you pay attention to submitting the right one. If you mess that part up, if you submit a different file, and you don't sort of go back and check it and catch yourself, I won't be able to grade the work because it won't have any of your actual C++ source code. It's going to be really critical. Again, when you listen to and you view Module 2, pay really close attention to what I'm asking you to upload, because if it's a different file that you upload, I won't be able to grade it. These are screenshots actually from a summer semester, but it's just kind of outlining a little bit about what you're going to do to submit labs and also homework assignments. You'll just scroll down to the corresponding assignment on Moodle. So say if I was completing Lab 1, when you click on it, you're going to add a submission, and you can browse or drag and drop to get your actual file. And again, Module 2, Part 2, that video will have a lot more detail about exactly what you're going to submit. If at any time you're not sure whether something went through, you're not sure how to submit any of your work, just email me right away. You're going to get a response via email from me generally, within 20 minutes, a half hour at most. I should be able to get back to you very quickly. Again, unless it's the middle of the night. So normal hours, I'm pretty quick. Required software. A couple of you have already asked me about this. C++ can be developed on any operating system. So if you're using Windows, you're fine. If you're using Linux or a Mac, although your environment, your programming environment, and the applications that you use to write code will be different than what you see on the videos, you'll still be able to do this. So the only stipulation is that I am going to require you to use Visual Studio on exams. So I would recommend that if you're using a Mac or if you're using Linux, if you want to set up your own environment to make that work, and I'm happy to help you. If you want to do that, send me an email and I can get you some help. But if you're going to use those systems, you need to at least try Visual Studio on a Windows system a few times to make sure that you know how to do it. And again, if you don't have any access to a Windows machine, sort of the last resort is that all the college campus computing labs have Visual Studio installed on them. So you should be able to gain access to Visual Studio at least a few times to get yourself familiar with it. And of course, all my videos are recorded in Visual Studio. So you should, hopefully by the midterms, have seen it enough and used it at least a few times to be able to work with it during the exam. If you're on a Windows machine, you'll want to download Visual Studio yourself on your own computer. It's free. There'll be a registration after a few weeks of using it. they'll just ask you for your email address, but it's totally free. I've posted some links to installing Visual Studio at home on Moodle, and that's also available right through the syllabus on my webpage. In terms of grading, the individual labs, so again, we're going to have 13 labs, 3 or 4 a week. They're small programs. They're designed for me to be able to see in a lot of detail whether you're struggling with some topics. They're designed to kind of challenge you to be able to assess whether you're understanding the given topics in a module. They're small, targeted programs. I'm happy to help you at any point in time that you have any questions you have with those labs, but they're graded in a fairly lenient manner. All right, so if you do a decent job and you've followed the directions and you've written a program, you're going to get pretty close to a 10 out of 10, even if there's some small errors or something like that. If you really barely turned in a program or something like that, you might end up with a 5 or a 3 out of 10 or something like that. But they're graded on a 10-point scale. Homeworks are graded much more in a much more fine-grained manner. All right, so homeworks you get a score between 0 and 100. And I'll be looking at the details. I'll be looking at that in a lot more detail and grading it to a little bit higher standard. Your labs and your homework combine for 30%. So your labs are 10%, your homework is 20% of your grade. So you can kind of do the math here. There's 4 homework assignments, so each one of those is worth 5% of your semester grade. The labs are worth significantly less, right? So there's 13 labs, 10% of your grade. So you're talking about less than 1% for each lab that you submit. The midterm, that will include live coding, so you'll have to actually write programs during the midterm and the final exam. Midterm will be worth 30%, final exam will be worth 40%. I don't curve any individual exams, but at the end of the semester, I do adjust the letter grades. If you look at the syllabus, I give you an outline of how I assign A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. That represents sort of the minimum. So if everybody's struggling and there's nobody in that 90 range or something like that, you could potentially move up a letter grade. So there might be some scaling afterwards. Main communication. Again, it's so critical that you don't fall behind in this course. We simply don't have a lot of time, and there is a lot of content, and it all actually builds on itself. It all builds on the previous topics. So if at any point you're not understanding something, if at any point you're struggling with a program, you have to reach out to me. So the best way to get in touch with me first is via email. Just send me an email. If you're working on source code, please send the full source code as an attachment, as a separate file attachment, so I can look at it in its entirety and understand what the problem might be. Moodle, I'll post announcements to Moodle. I will also post announcements back out to you. Check your email very, very frequently. You should be checking and making sure you look at the slides and the assignments frequently as well on Moodle. They're already there. I anticipate maybe we'll have some small updates to those slides, but generally I'll let you know if anything has changed substantially. In terms of office hours, again, this is an online course and I'm not on campus the entire winter session, but I can have office hours with you. I can meet with you for some face-to-face working on some of your programs and getting you some help. So even though I don't have set office hours, make an appointment with me. Email me. We'll make an appointment. Generally, any day during the semester, any weekday during the semester is going to end up working. But I do need to make plans to be on campus. So you need to let me know the day before that you're really trying to schedule a meeting with me, and we should be able to work out a time, no problem. Okay, so that's the end of this module. So we've kind of, I've given you an overview of the course policies a bit, talked a little bit about what computer science is all about. Your next step is to start really looking over the first week's work. The first week's work is about getting you started installing Visual Studio on your own machine or making sure that you can program on your own machine. writing some very simple programs just to make sure that you understand Moodle. And we're going to start to move quite a bit quicker actually after the first week. So I hope you enjoy the course. I hope I hear from all of you during the course of the next 4 weeks. And of course, I'll see you at the midterm.